So let's get into CitySpan and look how that, see how that can look. In CitySpan, there's going to be a few steps when you first get started, and then it's really going to be pretty self-explanatory. So you're going to locate and create your caseload students in the program, and you have to make sure that they're enrolled in the program and have a profile. And then you'll enroll them into your activities, your SEL and other activities. And once you do that, you'll email me. Then you can track and report your interventions weekly. So daily on paper, and then once a week, you take that piece of paper and you go into CitySpan and you mark it all. There's step-by-step instructions in the data timeline, but we're going to go over it today, and I'm going to kind of show you the instructions and what that looks like as well. When you get your caseload from your supervisor, so not only do they have to ensure that the caseload has consent for data collection, but they also need to provide you some demographics. So they need to provide you the youth name, birth date, the grade for 22-23 academic year, and gender identity. And preferably if they can also provide their racial identity and their free or reduced lunch qualifier. So then you're going to take all that data and you're going to have to input that into CitySpan and make sure it's up to date as well. Your site supervisor will provide you this. They can either provide it to you on paper or in a digital format, but you're going to need it in front of you when you first get into CitySpan. So we're going to log into CitySpan, and if you want to do this alongside me, you can. The link is here in the chat. Your username will be the first initial of your preferred name. So if you have a nickname, it would be that. And then your full last name, and the password will be password. I'm going to log in as well. Go to the side and this one. No. This one. Here we go. So on my screen, you should see CitySpan, the PowerPoint, and CitySpan, the website. Do I have an account, Sandy? I don't think you do, so you can just follow along. Has everyone been able to log in to CitySpan? I guess if not, put in the chat. Awesome, Sylvia, thank you. Cool. So if you can't log in, let me know. I can check your account. But once you're in, you're going to first, again, ensure all your caseload students are in the system. So this is where you would have the demographics and your caseload info right next to you. And you're going to look for all the youth. So the first step you do is go to participants and staff. And you're going to search for the youth. So let's say we're looking for Jane Doe. We find that person in the system. And we can see they're here. In this instance, there's a duplication of youth, and maybe they've got the same name. If that's the case, I would go into each account and match the birth date so that you have the correct youth, because there could be an older Jane Doe, right? So in this instance, we're going to click on Jane, and we're going to ensure the information is correct and up to date, including first name, last name, gender, race, grade for the 22-23 academic year, and racial identity if possible, and free reduced lunch qualifier. So I'm going to look here. I've got my student up. I've got Jane Doe, their gender identity. I've got their racial information, free reduced lunch status. And this could be where maybe it's changing, right? Maybe it was unspecified before, but maybe I now have data updated and I could update that to free reduced lunch. You're also going to change their academic year. So if this isn't filled out, and it probably will be blank, you're going to change their grade for this year. So last year we can see she was in kindergarten and now she's in first grade. And then I would save the information up at the top. Then I know that Jane Doe is in the system, their information is up to date and correct. Participants and staff. What if your student is not already in the system? So maybe I know my student's last name is Obama and I search for them and there's no matching records for this student. That means they're not in the system. So then you're going to go to add participant. You're going to search for them again with their name and date of birth. And then you would click here to add new student or participant. And you would add their demographic information, and you'll leave this selected on youth participant because they're a youth participant, and you'll update their info and you would then select add person. Then you know that all your youth are in the system, right? You go through your whole caseload, make sure all their demographic info is up to date. They're in CitySpan. Then the second step is enrolling the students into your caseload. And you're going to have 2 activity groups. So we go to groups and activities, and you're going to be able to see everybody here, but you're only looking for yours. So Sylvia, you're at the top. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use your groups as an example. So Sylvia has 2223 Barnum Other and 2223 Barnum SEL. And that's because Sylvia is going to be tracking other interventions and SEL interventions. She's going to take her caseload youth and enroll them in both of these activities. So first you'd go to the other, and you're going to click on the enrollment tab. And here there's no participants yet. So you're going to click enroll new participants. Then you would do what we did before. You would search for the youth that you just made sure were in the system. You'd be able to find them here, and you can see their date of birth, so you can make sure you're selecting the correct youth. And then you would just click on them, next step, and then you would enroll. Now this date here is the date of your first intervention with them. So if you get your caseload from your site supervisor on September 30th, but you know you don't have your schedule set up to have that first intervention on October 1st, you could put October 1st there. And then you'll essentially be taking attendance for their interventions starting on that date. Then you would hit next step, and it would enroll them. I'm going to cancel this so you don't have Jane Doe in your thing, Sylvia. Okay, so Sylvia would then go through and take the caseload, put everyone in other, then go back to groups and activities, go to SEL, and take all those youth and enroll them in SEL. Because then, when all your youth are enrolled, then you'll be able to track their SEL and their other interventions. This is a tip from one of our previous members. So they had the experience where, because the members are enrolled in one group of other, and then you go to do the SEL, the system might tell you there's a conflict or a clash in times, but you can just disregard that clash. So to bypass that, click on a box by their names to disregard the conflict. Because again, we're not worried about the time that the intervention's happening or really the length of time. We just want to track that the intervention happened on that day. So you can disregard that conflict because then they'll be enrolled in both activities. So then we're on to reporting the interventions. And I think Callie has a caseload enrolled, I think. So I hope Callie doesn't mind if I use her as an example. Where are you? Yeah. So we'll go to other. So in enrollment, you can see here's her caseload. So if you're going to track the interventions, you would go to the attendance tab. And you can see all the days will be listed. You can do all through today. You can do incomplete through today, empty through today. I would probably click on incomplete through today because then you'll see what you need to track. And Callie's already been tracking some interventions, which is great. And this is where on your piece of paper, if you did an other activity, you'd go in and track all the others, and then you would go in and do all your SELs. So it's really simple. Once you get the hang of it, you just click on the date. You'll mark it like regular attendance essentially. And this is where it's important to note that the time doesn't matter. And present and absent doesn't mean that if you click absent, it doesn't mean they didn't go to program. It means they didn't have an intervention with you. So you'll do that for the whole week, daily on paper, weekly in CitySpan, and then you'll be able to track your youth. And these PDFs from the PowerPoint are all in the member resource folder. So again, students may be marked in both STL and other for 1 day, if there was a meaningful interaction in both categories for the day, up to 15 minutes or more. But if they're just at program but you don't interact with them, you wouldn't be tracking them in your interventions. Again, that doesn't have any negative connotation for them being at site or at program. It just means they didn't have an intervention with you. Questions on CitySpan? Yeah, Sylvia.
Does